Shout out to J. Cole. He got project coming out called The Fall Off, and he got a mixtape where he used some of the locks.
Everybody keeps saying J. Cole is retiring. And I get why that word sounds clean, final, like closure. But nah, it doesn't really fit what's happening here. Because retirement usually comes after you're done, after the misses pile up, after people stop asking what's next and start whispering what happened. And that's not where Cole is. What we're actually watching is an artist trying to leave before the world gets permission to turn on him. And listen, this ain't about rollouts or schedules. This is about timing, about control, about knowing that staying 1 year too long can erase 10 years of respect. Because once the narrative flips, once he's selective turns into he fell off, there's no coming back from that. So when people say J. Cole is retiring, what they're really reacting to is something deeper. It's the instinct to escape before the fall becomes public. And once you see that pattern with Cole and with power in general, you'll never hear the word retirement the same way again. People keep saying J. Cole retired like there was some dramatic press release, like he woke up one morning, dropped a statement, and shut the door behind him. But that's not what happened. There was no mic drop, no farewell tour, no victory lap. What happened instead?
What happened?
Was way more subtle. A bunch of small signals spread out over time that people only notice after they stack them together. And that right there matters, because loud exits are for people who need validation. Quiet exits are for people who already know their value. See, the internet hates ambiguity. If something isn't labeled clearly, people rush to label it themselves. So one interview turns into he's done. One bar turns into that was the last one. One calm response turns into he checked out. But none of that means retirement. It means detachment. And those are two very different things. Retirement is final. Detachment is strategic. Detachment is when someone stops chasing the reaction, stops feeding the machine, stops explaining themselves to people who don't control their future anyway. And that's the energy here.
Yeah, boy.
Not exhaustion, not burnout, not defeat. It's someone slowly removing emotional investment, which ironically scares people more than a meltdown ever would. Because when an artist crashes, fans know what to do. They argue, they defend, they debate. But when an artist goes quiet on purpose, that creates uncertainty. And uncertainty kills comfort. So people rush to say retirement because it gives them closure they were never offered. But the truth is, this wasn't an announcement. It was an observation, and people just noticed late. If this really came out of nowhere, that would be one thing, but it didn't. This exit has been under construction for years. Most people just weren't paying attention to how it was being built. The clues weren't loud. They were emotional. Longer gaps, less urgency, more reflection than flexing. That shift matters, because when artists stop racing time, it usually means they've made peace with it. There's a point where hunger changes flavor. Early on, it's about proving yourself. Later, it's about protecting yourself.
Shout out to J. Cole. He got project coming out called The Fall Off, and he got a mixtape where he used some of the locks. He rhymed over money, power, respect, and he rhymed over can I live. Killed them shits. So Cole is coming back in a major way.
Do we look at him the same, being that they screwed his head off the big three?
You hear his bars, all of that shit don't matter.
It's over?
He's coming crazy.
Cause let me tell you something, man. They screwed his head off the big three. Is he in the big three?
I don't like that terminology,
cool.
So give me a pass. But they better screw his shit back on after you.
Listen, let me tell you something. The locks, no matter what you call it, in your biggest heyday, no matter what,
right.
You
it's all about the music. You going off the internet.
I'm not going off the internet. I'm talking.
That porch got to go back on where
I'm talking about hip hop, right? So what I'm saying to you is, you guys were fucking miniature compared to 50 Cent just sold 30 million records. You went at him. You went to the yard with the sword.
Answering your own question.
What's that?
He could sell 100 million. The bars and the power of the people in the street made all of that shit irrelevant.
He didn't come outside to Jada.
It's all in the music. You talk about knocking him out the park and this and that and that and this.
I gotta hear it.
He got some shit. You know what I mean?
Are you ever thinking of selling your catalog?
I think about it every day.
And somewhere along the way, The obsession with what's next turns into how do I end this right? That's where this feels like it's coming from, not panic preparation. The whole final chapter language didn't show up randomly. That's not something you say casually if you're still chasing charts. That's the language of someone closing loops, finishing sentences, making sure the message lands before the noise swallows it. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Most artists don't get to choose how they're remembered. The culture decides for them, usually after the decline. So when someone starts framing their work like a conclusion before that happens, that's not ego, that's awareness. And awareness is dangerous. Because once you see the pattern, you can't unsee it. That's why this goodbye feels stretched out. It's intentional, not rushed, not emotional, not reactionary. It's someone controlling the ending instead of letting the ending control them. Failure is loud. It's obvious. It's dramatic. Overstaying, that's slow, quiet, embarrassing. And that's what artists really fear. Not missing, but fading. Because failure still keeps you relevant. People argue about it, debate it, defend it, but decline makes people feel awkward. They stop sharing your work. They stop checking for you. They start speaking about you in past tense. That's brutal. Especially for someone who built their identity on precision and control. And here's the part most fans don't like to admit. The audience plays a role in that fear. Fans say they want artists forever, but the moment the spark dims, they become historians. Suddenly it's classic era this, prime version that, he used to be. That's a psychological trap, because the artist can feel the shift before the audience says it out loud. And once you feel it, every release feels heavier. Every bar gets judged differently. So at a certain level, walking away starts to feel safer than staying. Not because you can't still perform, but because you don't want to perform while being watched for decline. That's not weakness, that's self-preservation. Because the scariest thing isn't dropping a bad album. It's becoming someone people defend out of nostalgia instead of respect. And when you understand that, this whole retirement conversation flips. It stops being about quitting and starts being about timing survival. Nobody likes to talk about the pressure that comes after success. The pressure that doesn't scream, it whispers. Early on, pressure pushes you forward. Prove yourself, outdo yourself, earn your spot. But later, pressure turns into expectation, and expectation turns into surveillance. Every move gets watched. Every silence gets interpreted. Every choice gets framed as a statement. And that's exhausting in a way fans don't see. Because nobody's asking, are you inspired anymore? They're asking, can you still do it? Is he slipping? Is this the start of the fall? That's a trap. Because the artist stops creating freely and starts anticipating reactions. And once that happens, you're no longer making art. You're managing risk. The industry doesn't help either. Labels want consistency. Media wants narratives. Fans want reassurance. Everybody's pulling. Nobody's asking what it costs. So the pressure doesn't explode, it compresses. And compressed pressure does one thing really well. It makes people look for exits. Not dramatic exits, not emotional exits. Strategic ones. That's the part nobody wants to admit. Sometimes the calmest artist in the room is the one feeling the most pressure because they've already seen how this ends for people who stay too long. There's a battle happening inside artists at this level, and it's not talent versus competition. It's control versus ego. Ego says, drop again, prove it, remind them who you are. Control says, you already did that, protect what you built. And those two voices don't get along. Not when the spotlight is still warm, because relevance is seductive. It whispers that you still matter, that one more run won't hurt. But control sees the long game. It sees the cliff edge people pretend isn't there. That's why saying, I'm done, feels powerful. It's dominance. It's narrative ownership. But actually being done, that's terrifying. Because ego doesn't disappear quietly. It keeps asking questions. I don't understand. I don't know what's going on here. What if they forget? What if someone else takes the spot? What if the silence gets loud? That internal noise is real. And most people lose that fight. They come back, they rebrand, they explain themselves. But when someone resists that urge, that's not weakness, that's discipline. And discipline is rarer than talent, especially in a culture that rewards noise. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Hip hop doesn't actually like endings. It likes resurrection arcs, comebacks, redemptions, I'm back moments. Absence is forgivable, irrelevance is not. That's why retirement announcements rarely hold, because the culture keeps pulling you back in. A verse goes viral, a feature hits, someone mentions your name, and suddenly the itch comes back, not to create, but to respond. Most retirements aren't lies. They're emotional pauses, moments where the artist needs distance, but not disappearance. The problem is, hip hop keeps receipts. Once you say you're done, every return gets framed as hypocrisy. So artists get trapped. Leave too loud, you get clowned. Stay too long, you get dismissed. That's why the quiet exit matters.
I ain't playing.
No declarations, no countdowns, just less presence, less attachment, less need to be seen. Because the only retirement that actually works in this culture is the one nobody notices until it's already happened. And by the time people realize, the artist is already gone. Fans love the idea of a perfect ending, the final album, the last statement, the mic drop moment. It sounds poetic, clean, complete, but that idea is a myth because endings don't land the same for everyone. One person calls it a classic, another says it didn't hit, another compares it to your best work anyway. That's the trap. The final album gets judged against your entire career, not the moment it lives in. And no piece of art survives that fairly. None. So chasing the perfect ending becomes a losing game because you're trying to control how millions of people feel years into the future. That pressure leaks into the work. Bars feel careful. Ideas feel boxed in. Risk disappears, which is ironic because people say they want honesty, but punish artists when honesty isn't nostalgic enough. That's why some artists stop chasing the final album fantasy. They realize the ending isn't a project, it's a decision, a moment where you stop adding chapters instead of trying to write the perfect last sentence. And the more you understand that, the less you need closure from the audience. This conversation feels like it's about hip hop, but it's not. Music is just a lens. This is about power, about systems, about what happens when people realize their value inside a machine that never stops consuming. Every system wants maximum output, maximum visibility, maximum productivity, maximum availability. And the moment you slow down, the system calls it decline. That's true in music, in business, in content, in life. So choosing to leave early becomes radical, not weak radical. It says, I don't need to be drained to be validated. That kind of decision scares people because it exposes how trapped most of us feel.
Little help. Little help now.
We stay because we're afraid of being forgotten. We stay because the structure rewards endurance, not wisdom. So when someone opts out quietly, it forces a mirror. Not everyone likes what they see. That's why this moment creates debate. Not because it's shocking, but because it touches something personal. It asks a question people avoid. Do you know when to leave, or are you waiting for the system to decide for you? Here's the part people avoid. Most people don't fail because they weren't talented enough. They fail because they stayed too long. They stayed after the joy drained, after the curiosity died, after the thing that once felt alive became obligation. And the scariest part, staying too long feels responsible until it quietly turns into self-betrayal. Because the world rewards endurance. Keep going. Don't quit. Push through. But nobody teaches discernment. Nobody teaches timing. Knowing when to leave doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're paying attention.
Pay attention. Okay, pay attention to me.
It means you recognize the difference between growth and erosion. And knowing how to leave, that's the real flex. Leaving without burning bridges. Leaving without speeches. Leaving without trying to freeze the moment forever. Just releasing your grip. Because mastery isn't squeezing every last drop out of something. Mastery is walking away while it still respects you. And most people never experience that. They wait until the system spits them out, tired, bitter, confused. So when someone chooses to exit instead, that's not quitting, that's sovereignty. We live in a culture that celebrates grind, but ignores the cost. A culture that praises output, but punishes people who choose peace. And that's why moments like this hit a nerve. because they remind us that power isn't just about how long you last. It's about whether you're still choosing or just surviving momentum. Most people don't lose control overnight. They lose it slowly by saying yes one too many times. So here's the real question. Do you know when it's time to leave? Or are you waiting for the system to decide for you? And if this breakdown hit, watch the next video, because we're diving deeper into how culture rewards noise and punishes restraint. I'll see you on the next one. Panda out.